So a video stumbled across my feed and I thought it would be important to go through it here. It's got quite a lot of views in a short time. The title is Why Nobody's Vegan Anymore, and it's by this person called Levi.
A few short years ago, the vegan movement was at an all-time high. Every fast food chain across the country was launching their very own plant-based meats. Vegan influencers were garnering a huge number of views online, and there really seemed to be a shift in the broader cultural landscape towards a more plant-based diet. But today, we are seeing the pendulum swing in the opposite direction. The carnivore diet, which was really not a thing before, is the latest food phenomenon. Plant-based options are getting canceled, flagship meat companies are struggling, and the social landscape of veganism has fallen off of a cliff. Veganism as a fad or a trend was always likely to fall from its high, but with everything that's going on in the world, veganism has just lost its appeal for a lot of people, including myself.
So immediately we're framing veganism as if it's lost or failed. You know, he's showing some losses on the screen. Let's show some wins. Spoiler, I have already watched this, but unfortunately it gets a bit confusing whether or not this is actually the case, but he really does seem to conflate plant-based diets with veganism. There's a couple of times where he kind of makes a distinction, but then he just kind of falls back into just dismissing that. So I'm not entirely sure he knows what veganism is. So I'm gonna act as if he doesn't, and a lot of people behave as if they don't either. So that will be pertinent to this video, right? But yeah, if you're looking at it in terms of like a diet trend, that's the nature of diet trends. They're trends, they fall off, things change, it goes from one thing to the next. Suddenly carbohydrates are in, then they're gone, and it keeps kind of like circling around. So if you look at it that way, yeah, it's a trend and it will probably come back. People will be like, oh my God, plant-based eating, and call it something else that makes it seem fresh and never happened before. People do that with trends in clothing, in food, in all sorts, but that's not what veganism is. So yeah, let's just go ahead more and I'll expand upon that.
But right off the top, let's clarify some of the clickbait that we used for the title of this video. Obviously, veganism and plant-based foods are not completely dead as a category, let's just say. But in this video, I want to talk about how the social movement that surrounded this lifestyle has changed so dramatically. For a lot of people, veganism started around one movie. I watched Cowspiracy in 2015, and it genuinely was the thing that pushed me to rethink my eating. I started eating plant-based basically the day after I watched that movie, because it was literally the first time I'd ever seen the industrial food system exposed in that way. And I know for a lot of other people, that movie and a few others that came out around the same time were a real turning point. And for most people who watched that movie, going vegan was too hard to commit to, or they tried for a little bit and eventually gave up. But for many people, the very real horrors of our industrialized food system were exposed, and it made eating vegan about more than just eating a certain way.
Yeah, it's not like just the horror of our industrialized food system though. Veganism is a stance against the exploitation of animals. So unfortunately, we've come up with many creative ways to exploit animals for things that go beyond what we decide to use as food. And even if it's not industrialized, say it wasn't industrialized, and someone's just in their back garden and they grow chickens to one day kill them and eat them, that would still be a complete moral issue and not compatible with veganism.
People were coming out to their family members as vegan. People were losing friends over their dietary choices, and this label of vegan became a symbol of the kind of person that you were, and it needed to be defended. People had vegan tattoos on their body, they had vegan as their Instagram bio names, and the choice you made at the dinner table was suddenly a lot more than just a personal preference.
Some of the weddings, very bizarre. Yeah, it suddenly was no longer or a personal preference. I think what he's just saying is people recognize that it can't be a personal preference when you're literally intruding upon the rights of other sentient beings. I don't know if that's actually what he understands it to mean, but yeah, like it can't be a personal choice or a personal preference.
So yes, I dabbled in the space. I have some insight here, but I will be honest that a big part of the reason why I made those videos, and I only made a couple of them, was because the term vegan and plant-based had a lot of momentum behind it on YouTube at the time. I made a what I eat in a day video and a grocery haul video, and mostly I think I was doing it because I was trying to get videos any way that I could, and it was justified in some way because it aligned with the message that I was promoting at the time, which was around sustainability.
Yeah, see, there's this sustainability focus, and it becomes more apparent that like there doesn't seem to be an acknowledgement of what veganism is. And people get really annoyed when vegans come along and they're like, no, this is not what veganism is. They see it as nitpicky and arrogant, but it is just a misclassification. Like, I don't know, as soon as it's a vegan correcting someone, it's like, oh my God, you're so pedantic. But it's like, it's just wrong. It's like incorrect. Like, what do you want me to say? Oh yeah, no, that's very true. Because how can it be a correct classification if it's not telling you anything about like the behavior that a vegan does when it comes to non-diet, non-food? A diet doesn't necessarily compel you to change your behavior in other aspects, like the clothes you buy, amusement you engage in, or what cosmetic brand you purchase from. How would we explain that? How would I be like, oh, I'm a reducitarian, so therefore it would be wrong for me to go to a bullfighting event? that just doesn't cash out. So I just, yeah. I know it can be irritating for a vegan to say this, but it is just the case. And, you know, he talks about being concerned with rationality and nuance and stuff. So we need to make sure that we are using terms as correctly as we can, right?
But the reason why I never identified myself as a vegan content creator or leaned more heavily into that community online is because of the divisive nature of the vegan conversation around that time. Have you seen the debate of vegan videos? Of course you have. Have you, or like ones about, you know, vegans getting owned, you know, by some conservative cowboy or like a meat industry rep or something. And I think even to this day, it feels like there's so much more energy put into the debating of the moral implications of eating meat than the ways that we can actually reduce our meat consumption as a culture.
Yeah, I disagree. I think plenty of people are making space for that. I think debating is very important. When you're talking about what veganism is, it's a philosophy, right? It's a stance against exploitation. So, of course, people are going to want to put a lot of energy into talking about the philosophy, trying to bring across the discourse. And obviously, not enough energy has gone into debating the topic because it still seems like this is the public perception that veganism is some sort of diet. Like, there's moments of acknowledging that maybe vegans might be against fur and all of this stuff, but like there's no true diving into the philosophy. So no, I think there are plenty of people talking about reducing flesh intake. You have the reducitarians, you have the flexitarians, you have the climate conscious, you have health professionals who are like, oh yeah, please reduce your flesh consumption. Because there's very many reasons to reduce flesh consumption, but vegans, their focus is going to be on the ethics, right? But vegans are just not going to really do this anyway. If you are a human rights activist, you're going to be very much concerned unless you have some sort of framework where you're looking at utility and you believe that you can get to a goal quicker by being like, oh, less is more, that sort of kind of person, right? It seems like in social justice movements, you've had kind of welfarists and abolitionists kind of working together, kind of butting heads as well over what the best method is. But you literally have those people who are doing that. But many vegans or human rights activists, it's not going to be a surprise when they turn around and go, no, I want to say none of it, like no exploitation, no killing. I think it's important for people to also set some sort of standard that's morally consistent. You know, I might be very small, but I am someone who is like, no, that is going to be wrong. I'm not going to congratulate somebody for stabbing one person even if it's a reduction on yesterday, which was 5 people. It might be a reduction, but it's still a wrong thing that's occurring. I'm happy that there's this understanding that our current flesh consumption is a problem, but it's coming from multiple directions. You know, maybe it's a climate thing, maybe it is a slightly moral thing, even though that doesn't really compute with me, because if you're against it, you're gonna just be against it happening, right? But yeah, the word vegan gets deployed in this conversation when there seems to be a misunderstanding of what the philosophy even is.
Funnily enough, we asked the people on our Discord about this idea. We told them that we're making a video about veganism, and then literally within minutes, there was a full-on argument happening within the thread, which I think just perfectly encapsulates how impossible it is to have a rational conversation about this topic.
Impossible to have a rational conversation. I don't know how it would be a physical impossibility for it to be the case. Like, yeah, I see some irrational things happening in that conversation. And don't get me wrong, even recently, I had someone say that veganism entails a certain sexual orientation. In the next moment, I had another guy, he talked about how he'd rather get shot than cut the head of a rose, even though like 10 minutes before that, he had signed off on a human woman bacon sandwich being morally justified. But I maintain the view it is a possibility to have a rational discourse about this. And I think what's important to aiding that rational discourse is making sure we clarify terms.
And I really do think that it is this highly emotional, right and wrong, black and white kind of thinking that surrounded veganism that led to its failure.
It does get like a bit annoying when people say, oh, something's emotional, it's black and white. It kind of seems like some sort of tool to dismiss the existence of that way of thinking or behaving, right? What people seem to forget is veganism can also be very much logical. Animal rights are a logical extension of human rights. And I'm not convinced, you know, when he's saying words like failure, he's not actually demonstrating that it's failed. And if it has, how has it failed on the basis that it's not a current dietary trend? If you look at it as a dietary trend, yeah, it will fail, it will rise, it will then fall. It may come back in like 10 years. And then it will fall again. We are not depicting what veganism is accurately at all.
Entire industries are being affected by the switch away from a purist vegan culture.
What do people mean when they say purist vegan culture or something to that effect? Imagine purist human rights culture asking for a consistent view against animal exploitation. That's why it failed, you know, because you were just consistently asking for people to be against something that you find morally wrong in the straight equalized context.
As I said off the top, I am not saying that veganism or plant-based eating is dead completely.
He seems to be separating plant-based eating from veganism here, so that's good.
Even if you weren't one of those vegans, you were associated with the vegans who believed that it was them against the meat eaters.
Why is it always the extreme case when talking about would I kill an animal? Like,
exactly.
If you were in this situation.
There aren't lions running around downtown LA.
This, of course, just created an us versus them dynamic, which is not a great position for a food trend to make a lasting positive impression.
Then he calls it a food trend. I'm very confused by what he thinks the terms mean.
This all or nothing, in or out kind of tribe mentality was just not a good vibe. Even Impossible Foods, one of the biggest players in the alternative meat industry, has admitted that this kind of marketing was the wrong way to create a sustainable market. The CEO said, it was against the cattle industry. It was against the slaughter cartel. If you ate meat, you were a Neanderthal. We were insulting meat eaters. Since realizing this, they've pivoted towards flexitarian, aka people who eat some plant-based and animal products from time to time. And they're even pushing now a hybrid burger that's 50% beef.
The truth is, we're dealing with something incredibly sensitive. People generally don't seem to like being told bad things about their habits. They don't like being told seemingly that people they take to be very good people, or if they take themselves to be good people, are engaging in something bad, because there seems to be a trouble to distinguish good people from good action, bad people from bad action. In my anecdotal experience, I have attempted to be incredibly gentle and considerate of people's feelings while maintaining a consistent position against the exploitation of these animals, it is still in many of those cases seemed to have caused discomfort, outrage, negative emotions, just like it can if I'm being a bit more condescending or a bit more pushy. There can be some good results from that, or there can be some terrible responses from that. But I'm still unsure on the evidence declaring that the more argumentative, black and white, unapologetic style cannot be deemed effective. I don't know where that's coming from necessarily. Strictness, passion, conviction can also be helpful tools.
I'll admit, I ate a bunch of those Beyond Burgers, man, and every single time I shit my pants.
I had plant-based chicken yesterday. I will probably have a plant-based burger today, and let me tell you, I will not be shitting my pants.
I don't know if it's just me, but it's hard to convince somebody to eat a new fancy plant-based burger when their body just liquidates after eating it.
I can't tell if he's joking, but if you're serious, what data would demonstrate that you can expect to poop your pants as a result of eating a plant-based burger? I'm not supposed to be taking this part seriously, right? No.
And this explosion of popularity with mainstream brands and companies also sort of made it a widespread political ideology. People started identifying themselves as not vegans.
I like meat! I don't like vegetables!
And even anti-vegan. Veganism became synonymous with queer people, environmentalists, femininity, and in some ways, the radical left as a whole. And this is just a whole other level of the vegan trend that once again has never happened with another food trend in the past. And that is the protests and the activism, especially centering around PETA.
Never happened with a food trend, right? I am getting a bit frustrated now. It's never happened with a food trend before. All these other kind of social justice movements, all these other things it's associated with politically, it's just never been seen in a food trend. Do you know why? Because it's not a food trend. Why are you saying this? You seemingly want to have like rational discourse around this, then we need to know what it is you're actually referring to. Are you referring to veganism, the philosophy, like failing, right? Are you saying that? Or are you talking about a diet trend failing? Because if you're talking about veganism as a philosophy failing, you haven't actually represented what veganism even is and all the components that go into it. You've just talked about the dietary aspect.
And honestly, there was already enough fuel on this fire, but this just took it to a whole other level. Whether it was comparing animal agriculture to the Holocaust, comparing animal agriculture to slavery.
It went on a whole nother level comparing it to the Holocaust and slavery. What do you mean? As veganism is what it actually is, when you forcibly confine animals against their wills and use their body for our benefit, and then you send them to be gassed or have their throats slit or do all these things to them in order to kill them in the literal billions, how are we shocked, surprised, or seeing it as a whole new level that people are coming along and analogizing it to things that have happened in the human context? It seems more like you finally actually came across discussions about the repercussions of viewing animals and treating them as commodities. Like this is the real conversation, and he's framing it as if, oh, veganism went to a whole nother level. You really think it just all of a sudden just became this whole new level? No.
Or just constantly making headlines with their public displays all around the world, PETA put a very radical spin on this already unconventional lifestyle. And the worst part is that PETA actually did some pretty smart stuff that never got any of those headlines. They had a strategy where they would buy shares in food companies in order to pressure their board into offering vegan options or to end animal testing. This was apparently a big factor in Ralph Lauren dropping fur in 2006, but that's not what we heard about. Instead, this activism likely pushed us even further in the opposite direction. It's easier for the internet to go from vegan to carnivore than it is to go from vegan to vegetarian. Like I would say in the last 10 years, I have ranged between 50 to like 95% plant-based. But I can't explain that in a video because we don't seem to understand nuance anymore. There's no community around the 80%ers or the 60%ers.
Does he not know that like the flexitarian and reducitarian movement literally exists. No, it hasn't. These labels and communities literally exist. Then they're not even hard to find.
Flexitarian, aka people who eat some plant-based and animal products from time to time.
Humans are quite good with labels. They make all sorts of distinctions and, you know, we binary everything and then we realize that there needs to be another label to explain something else. We do this, so, you know, don't worry.
The internet has kind of fucked up our ability to see the nuances and the in-betweens in life, which is unfortunately the majority of it. Like if all you're seeing is like vegan gets owned videos on one side and then my vegan grocery haul videos on the other side, you're missing the vast majority of the people on Earth in the middle who just don't give a shit and are probably just eating somewhere in between there.
You absolutely don't miss that at all. Even in the vegan grocery hauls, you get people who aren't vegan and don't give a shit, as you say. There's an abundance of people who don't take a stance against animal exploitation. They may even promote it, support it financially, or make excuses. Trust me, I know. I've been doing this for over a decade. I have spoken to many people who don't care, who think that a stance against animal exploitation is just logically incoherent or anything like that. But, you know, I invite them to come and debate it because, again, the discourse around this is very important.
But there is no merch for those people. There's no call to action for those people.
There's no call to action for these people. I'm not really sure what he means. If it means what I think it does, then why would there be? You just said they don't give a shit. So vegans are going to make a call to action because, you know, many of us are going to be driven to take a stance and fight against literal rights violations happening in a bigger number than humans who have ever existed on this planet. So it's just so insurmountable. Of course, there'd be many calls to actions by a vegan.
And what is so weird about the carnivore diet in particular is that it has a lot of the same social challenges that veganism does. Showing up to a family dinner and only eating the meat is kind of weird. Preaching the health benefits of only eating meat is weird. Only eating Walmart steaks for every meal of the day is weird.
Yeah, preaching the benefits of a carnivore diet is weird when there isn't actually substantial evidence demonstrating said health benefits. So yeah, that would be weird. All these comparisons to other diets, however, forget again that veganism is not a diet. Would a carnivore dieter be compelled to take a stance on animal testing, bullfighting, horse racing, petting zoos? No, there's nothing intrinsically about a carnivore diet that would compel you to take a stance other than they might not necessarily be wrong, because if it is the case you are justified in exploiting animals for their flesh, I guess it would logically follow that it wouldn't be a problem then and would be justified to exploit them for other purposes. I suppose it could then have some sort of stance, but it's no real compelling need to, right?
And probably the biggest aspect of this is exhaustion. It is truly a luxury to be able to eat plant-based. It takes time and effort and money to make these kinds of specific choices about what we eat in a day.
This is so overblown. I've never been rich. I put my hand somewhere else in the supermarket. If I want chicken and broccoli, I just, instead of going down the aisle of chicken corpses, go to the vegan aisle and get the vegan chicken. I go to the meat-free aisle and pick the vegan chicken, and I'll go somewhere like Aldi where the vegan chicken is much cheaper, right? Yes, having a supermarket or a grocery store is in itself a luxury, but this isn't something that's only accessible to plant-based dieters or vegans. We have reports suggesting that plant-based diets can even be cheaper.
And so for a lot of people, what you eat on a day-to-day basis was the easiest way for them to simplify and make their life a little bit more manageable. And veganism just doesn't fit into that.
And he talks about simplicity, but what's more simple than a potato?
I don't think that veganism's decline has anything to do with people's lack of empathy for animals or our lack of interest in preserving the people and the planet that we live on, but rather a contextual response to the stresses that we feel nowadays. And until we fix that system, nothing else is going to change.
This is just doom a slop. There are constantly things changing around us. People change, things change, change is inevitable. Your choices have an impact on your direct environment and environments far, further than you would expect. I don't know why people pick this up when it's something that they would like to pick up and then completely drop the concept when it's not. It's just bizarre. To round up, he says there's a lack of nuance, but if you are saying this with all the things that are embedded in the video, this applies to yourself. It's impossible to have rational discourse. This is what you say. You make an impossibility claim about whether or not people can actually talk about this rationally, but you don't substantiate how that can be the case. There's no clarification of terms. Terms are being conflated, claims that things won't function without evidence. So this black and white emotional thinking that he's saying is largely part of plant-based eating and why it failed is applicable to the arguments that he's making. I would love to hash this out with him and have an actual discussion about what veganism is, and maybe we could go through it once we clarify the terms, if he would be up for it. Then maybe we could go through the conversation again, but with defining terms, understanding what they actually mean. We can look at it from a more rational lens and make sure that the nuance that he's seeking is actually present. It gets really annoying, and I don't do this in internal discussions on animal rights. Yeah, people do certain things, and sometimes I feel kind of cringed out by it, but I can't necessarily demonstrate that everything that people do that cringes me out is actually something that's not effective. I think there's some papers on like a couple of specific behaviors or specific types of advocacy, and I need to like refresh, because I'm happy then saying, oh, that really doesn't work, we should be doing something else, if it can be shown in that way. But people come along and just blanketly make claims that no, this doesn't work, no, but I can guarantee if someone came from his fan base that they would be much quicker to say, oh, you vegan, you're being irrational, you're being black and white, there's no nuance, all this stuff. And perhaps there really is some black and white thinking and a lack of nuance here, but I don't think so. So if anyone wants to actually have a conversation about it, I now link below in the description contact details so that we can set up a conversation or a debate. I see the benefit of having this discourse, be it in debate format or just a general conversation. And I want to take a moment at the end here just to say thank you to anyone who supports my channel. As you've probably seen, I've been able to balance my schedule much better now, so I'm more on track with making sure that I make plenty of content for YouTube as well as Instagram, TikTok, you know, where I also post. Don't forget, I do post on those platforms, so if you want to see stuff that you might miss, because things aren't necessarily always put on each platform, then follow me over on there too. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope you're well. And until next time, salads. I will see you soon.